Welcome to Q Niche Sports. Let's talk sport. I am your host, Lance Powell, and today we're going to cover a recap of week 5. Man, what a doozy. It was a crazy week. We're going to do some in-depth analysis and see if we can get better each week. So continue to watch. We're in week 6 now of the NFL fantasy. We've been doing okay. We want to do a lot better. We got a lot more weeks left in this season to improve. So let's dive right in and do some analysis on how we did in week 5. Again, this is Let's Talk Sports, Q Sport, and I'm your host, Lance Powell. Let's dive in. If you watched any games this weekend, you know that it was a lot of unpredictable football going on out there. Lots of teams won big. Lots of teams had, some close games. I personally feel like that Kansas City and Las Vegas game last night was an incredible game, 30-29. You can't get any closer than that. A 1 point win. Literally, Las Vegas lost that game on the last play of the game, allowing Kansas City to take the ball over after that fourth down, that turnover on down, and take a knee and win the game. I mean, I was watching it, and I believe what happened is Devontae Adams was running a route, and then there was another receiver running a route next to him. I can't remember his name, and they ended up colliding in the middle of them both running their routes. And when Carr threw the ball, he threw the ball so far over Devontae's head because he had already bumped into the other receiver. And so he just it's a misplay. But if Devontae would have kept running straight, he didn't dive into the field there a little bit. If he would have just kept running straight, he may could have beat the defender, got up under that ball and caught it. And who knows? They could have made a touchdown. They could have got a field goal. They could have done anything. The Oakland not Oakland. The Las Vegas Raiders could have won that game last night. And that is what makes football so exciting. Any given Sunday, any team can win, any team can crumble, and the other team can wind up victorious. And so it's just an amazing week of football. That was a great game last night. So let's dive into this week and let's see what has been going on in our fantasy league, our daily fantasy, and how we did in our NFL picks for week 5. Looking here at the Hateful Eight League this week, we have some, some surprises and some not so surprising things happened this week. So right now, if we're looking at the standings after 5 weeks, I'm in 5th place at 2-3. I don't score a lot of points, 527 points, right? So I'm the second lowest scoring team in our league. My opponents, however, have a tough time scoring against me. They're probably like middle of the pack when you go against me, right? So if you're going against Lance, expect to have a week of possibly some unpredictable things happen. Um, possibly. But it looks like this week that didn't happen with Kadero's Knight because he had the biggest blowout of the week against me at 34 points. And I'm not proud of being the biggest blowout of the week. So let's dive into our game and see what happened. Looking here, Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes had a battle, but Tom Brady just isn't scoring a lot of touchdowns right now. 4 pass touchdowns versus one is not going to get you enough points to beat Patrick Mahomes. However, he did throw for 351 passing yards. So we just got to get these passing touchdowns up. Tom Brady's got to throw more passing touchdowns. All right. Now, Tyreek Hill, he's questionable for next week, and he actually won his battle against Lamb. All right. Judy lost the battle against Sutton. We covered that. Henry lost his battle against Eckler. I mean, 173 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, and a receiving touchdown. It's kind of tough to beat that. Um, Derrick Henry did his thing. I mean, 2 rushing touchdowns, 102 yards from rushing and 30 receiving yards. It's just how the point system works. I mean, it just happens that way. Sometimes your guys, no matter how great they do, somebody does better with more yards or more scoring. All right. Mixon, I mean, that's a decent game. 78 rushing yards, 10 receiving yards, but no scores. He scores, that makes that a better game. Sort of similar to Saquon. 70 rushing yards, 36 receiving yards, run touchdown. So, I mean, getting one touchdown Mixon would have helped. Um, Mark Andrews, great bounce back week from last week. A touchdown, 89 yards against Hawkinson. He did a great job. Hawkinson didn't have a good game at all. All right. Edward Hilaire? Hilaire? I don't know. Tough to pronounce some of these guys' names. He's running back for Kansas City. He only had 5 points because of the 15 rushing yards, 20 receiving yards. Damien Harris got injured. Injuries play a huge deal in football, right? And this week, the injury bug bit us again. Our flex position got injured. We couldn't compete against somebody that scored 5 points. Our kicker only had one field goal this week against Buffalo. Now, you're thinking you're going against Buffalo is going to be a high scoring game. Well, not if your offense doesn't function and you can't put up points against Buffalo's defense. And that's what happened with Pittsburgh. They could not put up points against Buffalo's defense. They only got one field goal, 3-38. My kicker scored all the points for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Chris Boswell, I believe, is his name. Come on now. Your kicker can't be the only person on the team scoring points. Pittsburgh, step it up. All right. Miami. The defense of Miami has let me down for the last week. I am dropping them. -2 points. Gave up 35 plus points. They only had 2 sacks. No interceptions, no fumbles, no nothing against the New York Jets. The Jets went all over them, 40-17. I'm not about to keep gambling on Miami's defense. They're gonna have to show me something within the next 2 to 3 weeks for me to pick them back up again. I'm dropping them and I'm going on waiver wire every week to find my defense going up against Houston or Detroit or some of the other teams in the league that aren't very great. This made no sense. None whatsoever. Now, you could credit it all to Zach Wilson and his development as a quarterback. You can credit it all to the defense. You could do whatever. You could just say the Jets just had a better team, and that's fine. But I did not expect Miami to come out here and give up a 40-point game. And they've done this a few times this season, and it's just too much. The 35 plus point games that they're giving up is not a good sign for their defense. It's not going to be sustainable for the year. You can't keep giving up points like that. At some point, you got to stop some teams. And so I'm dropping them and I won't pick them back up unless something dramatic happens that shows me that they're capable of being on a fantasy squad. Now let's look at the bench players so you can understand how frustrating it is to have a flex person score 1 point and get injured. Because I had Devontae Smith with 13 points from 87 yards. Then I had McLaurin with 76 yards, so he got 10 points. I had Cooks who even got 4 points off of his 20 yards. I wasn't going to put Cooks in this week because he was going against Jacksonville, and I figured they would bottle him up. So I didn't put him in. But, geez, he scored more points than my flex did. And then you got Pollard, who I thought was going to be inconsistent this week and not get a lot of points. And he actually had 14. So it was a doozy. And the reason why I say I thought Pollard was going to be inconsistent is because I expected more from the Rams defense. I thought they were going to actually be able to stop Dallas's running attack, and they could not. It just didn't happen. And what is also crazy is that when you're on a team that's not playing from behind, you're playing from ahead, and you have a quarterback that is not necessarily looked as a passer, you're going to run the ball the entire game. And from what I remember in that game, Dallas's defense is the reason why they got the lead. And so from there, all the offense had to do was take care of the ball and play good, solid football, which is run the ball and not turn it over and hit open receivers when they're open. That's what Cooper Rush did. That's what Ezekiel Elliott did. He ran the ball in the fourth quarter, constantly getting 3, 4, 5 yards at a time, getting first downs consistently and over, moving the ball down the field. I think the biggest run play was by Pollard, who took off and scored a touchdown. And so when you look at how the game flowed, you're just looking at the Rams like, dude, y'all didn't give me a chance to be successful. Like you didn't try. Like how did Dallas just dominate you in such a old school fashion of football? And that's what happened. They just had great defense. They ran the ball. The Rams couldn't score. So when you're not having a high scoring game, you're not throwing the ball a lot. So you're running the ball. So if I would have thought about this game differently, then I would have went in with like, okay, Tony Pollard, you're in my flex position. That would have gave me, what do you got? 14.6. So it gave me 13 more points. What would that have done? That would have made this 107 to 128. Okay, so what else could I have done? Let's just say I said, you know what? Judy's not gonna have a good game. Tyreek's not gonna have a good game. If I would have been looking into a crystal ball, right? I could have got one more point there. And okay, so that's 23 points here, right? In comparison to the 15 or 16 here, right? So you get about 7 more points there. So 7 more points here, another 10 points here. What was it? 13 points here. That's 20 points. 20 more points would have put me at 114. So I still would have lost 128 to 114. So still, I would have reached my average. I would have reached my projection and I would have reached my average, I believe. But I would not have beat Kadero's night. So I would have lost this game this week, regardless, no matter what combination of players I put in. I would have had to pick up somebody off the waiver wire. I would have had to had a way better defense this week. Like a lot of things would have had to go right for me this week in order for me to win against Kadero's night. And those things did not go right for me. So tough week, tough loss. PME Python won another nail biter. Literally. That's not even a whole full point. And they beat Bomb Squad. Right? I mean, you look at this, the receivers for Bomb Squad let him down. The running backs for Bomb Squad let him down. And his tight end let him down. His flex position did a good job. He literally needed just just something more. Just one more point. He couldn't get it. That's a tough loss. You look at the bench, he put he put excellent players, excellent ball players in. I mean, there's no ball player that he could have swapped out and had a better game with, right? So he picked excellent ball players. His receivers, I mean, one of his receivers did great. The other one let him down, right? 3.8. Is there another receiver down here that could have got him higher than that? No. Running backs. Nobody down here would have scored more than 5.6. Tight end. He doesn't even have a backup tight end. Yes, he does. And he only scored 0.7. So, I mean, there was nothing that he could have done to win this game except score more points. Tough loss there. Jeremy's team lost again against Dam. Dam looks like he had a good week this week. Ah, what a receiver. Man, Look at these games. That was a blowout. It was a blowout. Because Jeremy had put some guys in to help him out. Yeah, just 17 points at wide receiver instead of Brown. So yeah, another 13 points there. You know, could have helped them out a little bit. Flex position did great. Tight end could have been a little better. But hey, tough loss there for Jeremy's team. Down takes the victory. And then here's another close one between Raphael's team and Big Game Players. We talked about this, that Big Game Players scores a lot of points. And it looks like Raphael scores a lot of points as well. And so this was a tough one. Less than 2 points there in difference in the win. And as you can see, these guys have players that were going off. This is this is tough. I mean, the running back core for Big Game Players kind of let him down, and then his flex position had an absolute zero, which is okay because the tight end for Raphael's team had an absolute zero. So at this point, when you see absolute zeros, if somebody else has an absolute zero, okay, cool. So we cancel each other out. So I mean, Big Game just needed a tougher defense to be playing, or his kicker to go off, or he needed his running backs to actually have a good game. And so remember, I was talking about Ezekiel Elliott. He didn't score, but he had 78 rushing yards, and that came because they were running the football to keep time of possession. It's what is it called? It's called a game script. The game script dictated for Ezekiel Elliott to get these yards, but it didn't dictate for him to score. So it's a tough one with Dallas. You got two great running backs, but it's all about game script. It's all about who's behind the center. I mean, are we throwing the ball to Pollard? Are we Dak and we throwing some screens? We throwing some wheel route. I mean, when Dak comes back, we're gonna really see how those running backs play. But I really feel like they're playing really good right now. I mean, based off of game scripts, and Dallas is winning games. It's incredible to watch. Football this year is really interesting. All right, so that's our league for the week. Those are wins and losses. And because of this week and those wins and losses, I mean, we got a guy on a 4-game winning streak in Cadero's night. So he lost that first game and then hasn't lost since. All right. Me, I'm very inconsistent right now. I need to get more consistent. So looks like these are the inconsistent teams, the bottom four guys, right? We got to do better. These guys up top, they're having pretty decent seasons. So right now, after 5 weeks of ball play, I'm in fifth place. That's not going to get me into the playoffs. So I have to do better. Now we're going to look at daily fantasy results from week 5. In week 5, I entered into 4 contests, 1 free one, and 3 that cost me a quarter. And I used the rule that I always use where I take my players in my actual league and I use them in a lineup to see how they do in the real world and daily fantasy. And then I also picked some players that I felt like would do good this week. So I'm just going to look at both lineups to show you how both did. The first lineup that I had wasn't a terrible lineup, but it could have been better. I had Geno Smith, David Montgomery, James Robinson. This one right here, this scoring total is a shocker to me. I really thought Jacksonville would have a way better game than they did against Houston. So that is a shocker to me. This George Pickens, that was I was going out on a limb with that one. I'm not gonna even lie. So for him to score 11.3 points is actually kind of impressive to me because Pittsburgh didn't have a great game. All right, Tyreek Hill, with him having this questionable on him, I believe he wasn't probably fully healthy in that game. And then I also found out that Teddy Bridgewater got taken out of the game for a concussion protocol. So you got 2 quarterbacks for Miami Dolphins that have been taken out of the games for concussion protocol twice on me this year. Man, all right, Tyler Higbee, decent game for a tight end, 46 receiving yards. He had 10 targets. I mean, doing what he can out there. And then Alvin Kamara with his return looks good. I mean, he lost a fumble, but other than that, he looks good in his return. Jacksonville Jaguars, they scored 5 points, only 13 points allowed in the attack. Okay, so I mean, their defense did decent as far as fantasy scoring, 5 points for a defense. That's okay. But when you look at a Patriots defense who allowed 0 points, at 2 sacks, an interception, a fumble recovery, and a touchdown, that is a better defense for you with 22 points. So we're just looking at things now. Alert here. Rashad Penny is hurt, right? So I believe there's a running back who's a rookie for Seattle Seahawks. I believe his last name is Walker. And so I may be picking him up next week. Um, in either a daily fantasy or in my league or something. But yeah, Tyler Lockett had a great game. Justin Jefferson, Gabe Davis, those receivers went off. Leonard Fournette had a great game. Um, Austin Eckler, Josh Allen. So these players that this guy picked, I mean, he picked some great names this week, and it paid off. 216 points to this guy, and he won the prize. All right. Scored a little bit more points with this lineup, but didn't win anything. This guy pretty much had the same players that the other guy had. Josh Allen, Austin Eckler, Leonard Fournette, but he had Stephon Diggs instead. Still had Tyler Lockett. Brandon Cooks having 4 points. People are like, yo, what happened? And I knew that was going to happen. I knew Jacksonville was going to stop him from scoring a lot. Taysom Hill. I almost picked Taysom Hill. I almost picked him over Dallas Goedert. I did. I almost picked him, and I didn't. And I should have. And I really should have. Or I at least should have put him in my flex position instead of Mark Ingram. Jeez, like, what was up with me? I knew Camaro was coming back. I heard that Murray, I think it's Latavius Murray, I think he was hurt. So I was like, let me put Mark Ingram the second in. No, I should have put Taysom Hill in. That right there would have gave me 30 more points. I would have had 138 points. Still wouldn't have won anything, but at least I would have had more points. Defense, like I said, I'm dropping the Dolphins. I'm picking somebody else up. So daily fantasy didn't do great this week. Not at all. And that's just that on that. That's the naked truth. Had a horrible week in daily fantasy. All right. Lastly, let's go ahead and cover week 5 NFL picks and look at my point total and see how I did with my picks for week 5. So Indianapolis won. I'm happy about that. I picked that upset and they came through. Now, I did a lot of analysis on this Green Bay and New York Giants game, and I really felt like Aaron Rodgers was going to be the one to pull it out to allow his team to win. But he didn't. And that's just how simple it was going to be for me. It was going to be either Aaron Rodgers delivers and Green Bay wins the game, or he doesn't and they lose. And that's what happened. He was not able to deliver that final blow to the New York Giants to win the game. And so that's why they lost. But I felt confident that Rodgers would be the determining factor in that game. Buffalo versus Pittsburgh, Buffalo's all over. Chargers and Browns. This one is interesting. Cleveland missed a field goal, I believe, in order to lose this game. They literally lost the game on a field goal. So if the kicker makes that game, boom, 31-30, Cleveland wins. I have another point. So I don't feel bad about that pick. If it would have been a blowout, I'll feel a little different. But no, I had confidence in Cleveland and they almost pulled it off. Minnesota over Chicago, I figured that would happen and it did. Now, I went out on a limb and picked Detroit against New England because I thought Detroit was going to be able to run the ball. Apparently not. New England shut them out, destroyed them, made them look like not an NFL team. You know what I'm saying? Like Belichick had a great game plan and they destroyed him. 29-0. All right. Seattle and New Orleans. This one is a shocker. You got Kamara coming back. He had a touchdown. But Taysom Hill had three. Did he have four? Didn't he have a receiving? Hold on. He had at least three scores that I know of, maybe possibly a fourth. And so it's like that's five scores plus a field goal or a safety or a 2 point conversion or something. Like it's 39 is a weird number, but you could tell that that's at least five scores there, five touchdowns there. So it's like, wow, you know, wow. It could even be six touchdowns, but it's probably five. And I'm just like, wow, Seattle, you couldn't stop New Orleans offense at all, could you? And they couldn't. But they put up points themselves. So New Orleans couldn't really stop Seattle's offense either. So that one was really a toss up. That's why I picked Seattle. I thought they would possibly play a little bit better. I am not certain that I should have picked Seattle though. Probably should have picked New Orleans, especially due to the fact that Camaro was coming back. Should have paid more attention to that. But yes, moving on. The Jets is a surprise over Miami for me. It is. I have nothing more to say about that. I'm going to start watching the Jets a little bit more closely and paying attention to how they play football because that is a dramatic win 40-17. That's not a fluke. That is a team dominating the other. All right. Tampa Bay over Atlanta. That was a great game. It's a great game. Now, Atlanta got out to a slow start, but they tried to fight back. It was a good game. Tom Brady is the GOAT, though, and he was able to seal the deal. And they also have a great defense out there in Tampa Bay that helps out with that. All right. Tennessee and Washington. This is one of those games that's tricky because Tennessee can go out there and stink it up, but they didn't. Derrick Henry had a couple of touchdowns, and they did what they needed to do to win that game. All right. Jacksonville and Houston. This is also a shocker for me. I went out on the limb and I said there's no way that Jacksonville was going to lose, and they actually lost to Houston, a team that had 0 wins for the season. Jacksonville, the team that has been surprising everyone and having great defense, even shutting someone out the other week, loses 13-6. Now, that just shows me that their offense is still going through some growing pain and that Trevor Lawrence is got to get better as a quarterback. Yeah, San Francisco and Carolina. Definitely thought San Francisco would win. They did. Rams. I thought the Rams were going to beat Dallas, but they didn't. Um, Philly over Arizona, Baltimore over Cincinnati, and Kansas City over Las Vegas. You see how close these games are? 3 point, 2 point, 1 point. It was a crazy week in the NFL. Those are some close games. It's all about just what's going to happen next. Who's going to make the best pass? Those different things. Who's going to get the most first downs? Who's going to get the critical first downs in the fourth quarter? Who's going to have the time of possession? Like it's so many things that factor into these type of games. Who's going to miss the field goal? Who's going to miss that last throw of the game? Or which receivers are going to run into each other and then the quarterback throw the ball over both of their heads? Like those types of things happened this week. And it was crazy. So I scored 9 points. I said I wanted to get 10 this week. I'm 1 point away. Gotta get 10 or more points 4 weeks in a row to kind of catch back up with this league. I'm 32-7 right now with my picks. It's pretty bad. 32-47 with my picks right now. And that's pretty bad. And I want to improve there. So that's the analysis of week 5. All right. So NFL Fantasy 2022, week 5. It was pretty disappointing as a league, disappointing as a daily fantasy player. Uh, but doing my NFL pick'ems, I feel a little bit better. I had a 7 point week, an 8 point week, a 7 point week. I've had a 9 point week. So I'm getting a little better, trying to get to 10 or more. I would love to get all 16 correct, but that is really difficult to do. But yeah, love to get 10 or more. That would help out in the standings here. But yeah, like just excited for week 6 and what it's going to bring. Excited to pick my players, excited to see what daily fantasy is going to offer. Going to be watching a lot of news this week, doing some reading, learning things about stats, different teams. Now that we're in week 6, we have a lot more to work with as far as data analysis, stats, things like that. You can kind of try to look at analytics to try to come up with the best um, lineup to put out there. And so you also can start to go off gut feelings as well. Now you use the eye test and you look at some of these teams and you just kind of figure out, okay, shoot, New England's probably going to be all over Detroit. That's something that I should have thought of. But yeah, so different things like that are starting to happen this season. So hopefully the predictability starts to get a little better now that we have a larger data set. However, with football, it's still an unpredictable sport because of injuries and also because of penalties and different things that can happen out there on the field that you just have no control over. And so that's what makes fantasy sports so exciting and so nail biting because it's like at all times something good or bad can happen and it keeps you glued to the sport that you're playing the fantasy in. So, like I said, this is Q Sports. Let's talk sports. This is the week 5 analysis. Stay tuned for later this week when we will drop our week 6 video of selecting our daily fantasy roster and our league roster and our picks for week 6 of the NFL. You guys have a great day.